What's up, y'all? This is DJ Kenny Parker, DJ and producer for Boogie Down Productions / KRS-One, and today I'm back with another video. Now, today's story centers around the classic KRS-One 12-inch off the Return of the Boom Bap album, The Sound of the Police. Now, there's a very interesting story surrounding how the song The Sound of the Police was made and how that 12-inch was put together. I'm going to break it down today to the best of my memory and give you all a little behind the scenes. So let's go. The beginning of this story starts in the year of 1992. KRS-One, who is my brother for those that don't know, would come by my apartment often and we would work out little routines. We would practice on the turntables and we would also practice on the SP1200 different songs and ideas that we wanted to work on. In the future, I'm going to put out some of those practice tapes that we used to make. They're pretty dope and pretty interesting. Anyway, I was working on an artist called Heather B, a female MC from New Jersey who was one of my good friends who I went to college with. So Heather and I were working on some music at the time for an upcoming Heather B release that unfortunately never came out. At the same time, KRS-One was starting to work on some music for a new Boogie Down Productions album. Now, KRS-One comes to my house and we started working on the SP1200 and the turntables. And he goes to me, yo, last night I had an idea for a dope song for Heather B. The chorus goes like this. Whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the beast. Like that. And he's doing the chorus in my ear. So I was like, yo, that sounds dope. He says, yeah, I'm going to call Heather and I'm going to tell her to write to this. This is going to be a dope single for her. So he called Heather, he told her the idea, and we went into the studio to work on the song. I was to produce the beat, and I produced the track for the song, and it sounded like this. KRS-One came in the studio and laid down the chorus on top of this beat that I produced, and then Heather commenced to start writing and recording her version of the song. When the song was completed, Heather and I started circulating the rough cassette to certain DJs in the New York City area. And some of them started playing it on their mix shows. Real underground though. At the same time that we were working on the Sound of the Police song, the Boogie Down Productions' 5th album, Sex and Violence, was starting to wind down. I did a whole breakdown on the Sex and Violence behind the scenes making of on this channel. I think I'll put a link in the description below. To make a long story short, for those of you that didn't see my Sex and Violence breakdown, after the release of the Sex and Violence album, the sales were disappointing and Jive Records was not happy. Jive Records decided that they didn't want me anywhere near any KRS-One projects ever again. I was basically blackballed from working on any KRS-One projects or anything that had to do with Jive Records. They were that disappointed in my production on the Sex and Violence album. So a decision was made between Jive Records and KRS-One that the new BDP project would no longer be called Boogie Down Productions and would now be called just simply KRS-One. Anyway, I continued to work on Heather B's project and just chill. So I was not in the studio for most of the recording of the Return of the Boom Bap. I was in the studio for the recording of the song Outta Here. And by this time, as you guys know, DJ Premier, the iconic producer, and my brother was hired to do, I believe, 5 songs on the new KRS-One album called The Return of the Boom Bap. Right around this same time, the deal that Heather B had with the record label that was going to put out this album that we were working on fell through. So Heather decided that she was going to go her own separate way and make her own music. So she decided she was not going to use the song, The Sound of the Police, that KRS-One had gave her. So the song went back to KRS. Now, During the recording of the Return of the Boom Bap album, KRS hooked up with the legendary producer and part of the duo of Digging in the Crates called Showbiz and AG. And as I heard Chris mention this on a few occasions, Showbiz had some beats that was rejected by another artist, and he played them for KRS-One. And one of them turned out to sound like this. Chris heard that track and immediately said, "I'll take that beat, thank you, and I have a song that'll go perfect to it." And he wrote what would later become one of his most recognizable songs, especially of the 90s, called The Sound of the Police. The Return of the Boom Bap album by KRS-One dropped in September of 1993 to great reviews. The first single, produced by DJ Premier, was called Outta Here. It was decided that the second single, which was to be released in December of 1993, would be the song The Sound of the Police. Now, Jive was putting together the 12-inch, and they hired a very well-known, legendary producer to do the remix of Sound of the Police. While we were shooting the video for Sound of the Police, Jive Records came over with a cassette of the rough mix of the Sound of the Police remix. Unfortunately, this remix was not up to par. The track that this producer put down changed the whole vibe of the song and just didn't go. And it was agreed amongst everyone there that this remix was not it. Unfortunately, this big producer had already received half of his money for the remix. And that money is his to keep, whether you like the remix or not. So now, nobody liked the remix, what are we gonna do? So Chris told Jive right there at the video shoot, he said, "Look, give me the balance of this producer's money and I'm gonna make my own 12-inch. So, since Chris was an established artist who had a rapport with Jive, and they had no choice, and time was ticking, they said, "All right, Chris, take the remaining budget and let's see what you can do." So then KRS turns to me right there at the video shoot and says, "Yo, you want to do this remix? What you got?" So I was like, "Oh shoot, I'm back in the mix? Of course I got some beats. I got a beat for this right now." We booked studio time for the next day. I came to the studio with a couple of beats, and one of them sounded like this. Chris said, "Yeah, that's bumping. That sounds more like the style of the Return of the Boom Bap. That's gonna be the remix. Put that beat up." Next thing you know, in about 2 hours' time, we remixed The Sound of the Police with a Kenny Parker beat. Now, let me state for the record, if it wasn't for KRS-One being my brother and giving me a chance, not only would I have not done any music on the Sex and Violence album, but I absolutely would not have had a chance to do the remix of The Sound of the Police because Jive was not hearing me at all. Let me say that once again. Jive was not checking for me. KRS-One decided, I'm gonna let Kenny do the remix regardless to what Jive thinks. So they turned in the remix, and Jive actually liked the remix. They liked it enough that they put the remix and the remix instrumental on the 12-inch along with the original version. About a week later, Chris calls me up and goes, "Yo, when you was at the studio last year working with Heather B, you left a stack of floppy disks in the studio." Floppy disks, y'all, look kind of like this. This is a floppy disk, and it goes into this SP1200 machine right here. I left a stack of discs in the studio, probably like about this many in the studio, and I didn't even know. I had so many discs that I didn't even know I left it there. The guys at D&D Studios, who we were working out of, saw Chris and said, yo, your brother left these discs here. When you see it, give it to him. Chris said, sure. But instead of giving me the discs, Chris decided to pop them into the SV1200 over here and see what they sounded like. Chris heard some music that he liked on these floppy disks and decided to make a song out of them. Chris took about 3 or 4 of the discs that I had and combined them together and made one track out of it. So when he called me, he said, come to the studio. I got a surprise for you. I took some of your beats and I made a song. It's called Hip Hop versus Rap. So when I came to the studio, he put the song up real loud in the big speakers. And as soon as the beat came on, I was like, oh, I forgot all about that track. Oh, and I started bouncing, and I heard another track that I had forgot all about that I had looped, and he mixed them all in really dope, and he added some dope drums under it. And then the lyrics started.
You can't be ribbing the mic like do re mi mi measles all contain.
To which what I believe is one of KRS-One's probably top 10 vocal performances of his career, in my opinion. The song Hip Hop versus Rap was a throw-in song to be on the B-side of this 12-inch. So it was not on the Return of the Boom Bap album. Chris just made it specifically for this 12-inch. Jive didn't know that Chris was gonna make this song. So once again, Chris just said, this is the song that's going on this 12-inch. So now I had 2 tracks on this 12-inch, not because of Jive, but because of my brother Chris decided that he thought the music should be on there. Needless to say, y'all, when the 12-inch dropped, it was a huge success. And like I said earlier, The Sound of the Police became a big hit for KRS-One and probably one of his most recognizable songs. And the remix that I did also got a lot of play around the country, and the song Hip Hop versus Rap also got a ton of play on the rap radio mix shows. So I was very happy about that. It kind of brought me back into the fold as a viable producer. So in summary, I always feel like things happen for a reason. And I felt like that song, The Sound of the Police, was supposed to be a KRS-One song. And he absolutely crushed that record from beginning to end. Shout out to my homegirl Heather B, who went on to make her own music and have her own career. Shout out to my brother Chris for allowing me to get back in the fold after I was banned from working with BDP. Shout out to the producer who made the remix that didn't really fit the style of BDP, which opened the door for me to get back in the mix. And shout out to everybody who's watching this channel and checking out this breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and a like, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.